We'll hop into it. Thanks for being here this morning for the next installment of Stories of St. Augustine's. These are oral histories with different members of the church sharing their reflections and recollections. And there's set questions, but there's plenty of time. If you have a question and want to hop in, just raise your hand. We've got plenty of time to talk things out. Also, you can see that these are being recorded. They're available on the website. Just go, there's a Stories of St. Augustine's tab. So if you want to go back and look at some of these, or if you missed some in the past months, they're on there. We'll keep doing this in the new year with a monthly installment, making the rounds and hearing different people's stories. So, I'm delighted to have John Nixon here today to share his reflections. He and I are two of at least four documented Johns in the church. We think there may be others. There used to be a lot of Johns and a lot of Bobs, but there are at least four known Johns in the church. So
we have a Gospel John, don't we?
And we got the Gospel John, right? Yeah. So I wanted to ask, what was your earliest memory of St. Augustine's?
Oh gosh. Well, as you know, I grew up probably about a Tiger Woods drive from here to the top of the hill on Wheel Road, and I was the first baby baptized in this building. St. Augustine's was a mission. Started out as a mission in the late 50s, and my father, my uncle, a lot of people who were involved, a lot of people are listed on the plaque in St. David's Hall, some of the original members. They would meet at Daniel Village Shopping Center. There was a room there. So that's really where the mission started. And then my grandmother gifted the land to the church, and then my father, the architect, Mr. Lowry Stubb, who designed, well, I'm pretty sure he designed this building, but he did do the narthex. They were all friends, and they had all moved out to West Augusta. And they had left Good Shepherd and St. Paul's, and my parents had moved from South Augusta actually to the location over here on Wheeler Road. So yeah, my first memories, I lived over here. I played in all these woods. Then that was about probably 61, 62-ish, somewhere in there. So yeah, I was 2 years old, so I probably don't have a whole lot of recollection there. Probably not even the baptism either, for that matter. But it all happened in this building and in the hallway. And at that age, at a tender young age of 4 or 5 years old, there's just a lot going on. I don't know, was it because we were kind of jammed in here? We had the choir would be back here, the organ, the piano player would be back here. There was a makeshift altar. Railing, if you will, the cloakroom for the vestry, the sacristy was right there. So it was right here. So and I could walk here in 5 minutes from home. So there was really no excuse not to be here. It's like, Dad, and Dad'd be like, "Would you get lost this morning?" Like, no. But, and it was just great. It set a foundation from where. From then back, gosh, how many years that is now? I guess it's as old as I am. I'll be 65 later this month. So yeah, 65 years ago, 60 years ago. Lots changed. I'm sure that's coming up in the next question.
So your family, had they been at Good Shepherd or St. Paul's or both for stretches?
Well, actually, St. Albans is my father. We had some property off Lumpkin Road. And he was going to St. Albans at the time. My grandparents, Granny Lizzie, the one you see her name, and my grandfather, Gwen Henry Nixon, they were Good Shepherd, where they lived on the hill, various different homes. So yeah, St. Augustine's wasn't even on the radar until they gifted the land, and that set the plans in motion. And it wasn't long before St. David's Hall was built. That probably was put in the late 60s. And then when the big A-frame church went up, that was in the early 70s. And that was probably one of the most exciting times. There's just so many cool different things in that church, narthex, that make it so special. Everything from in the altar, you know, there's a safe in the altar, and there's like a timeline bottle in there. There's a letter, I believe, right, Pat? And yeah, you know, so Larry Stubb, the architect, you know, I mean, he always had kind of like crazy ideas, and you can see contemporary. My parents' house was contemporary. Almost had like you know, a Frank Lloyd Wright kind of look to it. Very untraditional than the other churches, but it certainly has been home for me.
Yeah. With St. Augustine's being a mission, so like certainly like the city of Augusta was growing in those decades. Richmond County was growing population-wise. Were the existing Episcopal churches kind of like filling up, and there was, you know, need for, desire for another Episcopal church, and maybe in this area?
Well, I think you know, you're well, obviously St. Paul's and Good Shepherd being the two oldest, they just kind of held on to their base, and I kind of feel like St. Augustine's has held on to their base too. We're not getting any younger. And I don't like to use the word dying congregations, but you know, and I think that's an issue. But back then, you know, to answer your question, yeah, I mean they were looking to grow too, and obviously they were losing people to St. Augustine's. You know, because West Augusta, this was starting to expand, and this really felt more like a neighborhood church in those days. We were pulling from Fort Gordon, we were pulling from the Hill a little bit. But most of it was coming around in Waverly and you know, here. Okay. Brentwood Pool. You know, everybody knows about Brentwood Pool, but you know, families would join that, and then next thing you know, they're showing up here. So really had a great neighborhood feel to that. Yeah. Whereas I think the others today, they've got the same issues we've got, and you know, everybody's just trudging forward. Yes, ma'am.
Was it a mission church that was supported by Good Shepherd and St. Paul's, or, you know, I think sometimes new congregations start because they're a mission from another church?
You know, I really don't know the answer to that. My guess is yes. I'm sure there was some sort of diocesan protocol, if you will, that I'm sure they followed. But yeah, I guess Ann has spoken. She probably can answer that question.
Pat, do you know? I never thought that, but I never thought about it, to be honest.
We did receive a lot from St. Paul,
Yes.
but I don't think it was actually a mission church, so to speak. I mean, the sense of, you know, we're going to please help out St. Augustine's.
Yeah, that, you know, I believe they first started meeting at the Oliver General Hospital, which is now the green space off of Comfort Road, Wrightsboro Road. That was the Ricker Hotel or something. Anyway, they met there after they left Angel Village, and then when this building was built in 61, 2, somewhere in there, that's when they moved over here. But as far as you know, I really don't know really what the protocol was. I wasn't involved. I was in diapers.
So in terms of growing up here, coming of age, was there certain you know, experience or event that was formative for you in terms of shaping your faith, just as a child or a young person?
Oh gosh, well, Father Al Meade was called as rector in the late '60s. He was my godfather. He was married to Ann Meade. They had 2 daughters, Laura and Gretchen, and they lived in the rectory. And my parents and them became best friends. And what was interesting, the age difference in the two. They were probably in their 30s, and my parents were, well, my father was 54 when I was born. So that tells you I had older parents. Kind of raised like grandparents, like a grandchild. I'm the youngest of the 5 on my father's side. So, you know, the church was my whole life. I mean, you know, weekends, trips to Savannah to see the, you know, to see the bishop, because Father Meade was in Savannah. He got called to St. Augustine, but he was still doing work at the diocese in Savannah. So he would, take these weekend trips, and he had this little VW Bug, little yellow car. We'd all pile in that thing, go to Savannah for the day and come back. But, like I said, in this room, it seemed so big then, and now it looks small, because we expanded. But, I was kind of hooked from then on, because I was basically weaned, on the Episcopal Church. But, as I got older, I was involved in all the youth over here. I built a nativity scene out of logs, and anything they asked me to do as a kid, I would do it. I mean, as I mentioned in my stewardship talk, literally, I started, all the way up to an old and grown lay reader, and but I basically did everything, from carry the cross to being a torchbearer to, whatever. It was fun, and at that age, kids are. My friends were like, man, you go to church a lot, And they started to come. They wanted to see what was going on. And, of course, that didn't last long. They're a member of the Methodist Church over here, the Presbyterian Church on Walton Way, or maybe another Episcopal church. But, yeah, the unique thing about it, St. Augustine's is the people came from all around. It just wasn't like a clique here and a clique there. It was, in the way it is today, very much so. I'd have to say later in life, what really has had an impact on me, I would have to say, I mentioned my father was 54 when I was born. He died when I was 31, naturally, of 86 years old. So, and my mother was 3 years later. So, I had my first taste of grief, then. I thought the church was very helpful in that regard. And then 9/11. You've heard me talk about 9/11 before. That probably was the most profound event in my life. And the power of prayer and the support from people was really key. So I moved away. I moved to New York for 18 years and thought I'd never come back. And I moved my leather to a church in Long Island. Previously, when I was living in New York City, I went to St. Thomas on Fifth Avenue. Very high Episcopal, very conservative Episcopal cathedral, really. It's so massive. But what was fun about that is before we had children, I would go around to all the different Episcopal churches in New York. My ex-wife, she was Baptist. So she wasn't really ready to jump out of bed and, have me follow me around Manhattan as I scout out churches. But I had a lot of fun doing that. I saw a lot of different sides, conservative, I use that word not in a political sense. It's just, whether it's more tradition, I'm big on liturgy. I love, the whole liturgy side of the service and everything. But so when Karen became pregnant with Caroline, we decided, okay, we've got to move. We don't have big enough space. I was working on Wall Street. I was kind of getting burned out at the time. I'd been there for 15 years. And so we had a second home in Long Island where we'd weekend. And we joined the church, St. Luke's. Beautiful church, made stone architecture, all stone walls. Really, really, really cool. I don't know, do you know Charles Scavullo from Miller Theater or the Imperial Theater?
I've met
okay.
Briefly.
His in-laws lived in East Hampton, Long Island, so they were members of the church. And what was crazy, when we moved back, I ran into him. I said, didn't you used to go to St. Luke's? He's like, yeah. Like, so small world in that regard. But yeah, so we jumped in, got involved with St. Luke's, moved my letter, and had never moved my letter, And then 9/11 happened, and that just changed everything. And my wife was from Atlanta, and our children were 4 and 2, and it just blew me away. I lost a lot of friends. I worked on the 105th floor of the World Trade Center, and I had quit the job about a year before 9/11. So we decided pretty quickly we were going to move back to Georgia. And what I remember, and this is one of the most touching things I remember about coming back. Father Phelps was the priest then, and he had been called, just about to be called to the diocese to work for the bishop, I guess. And there was Elena Thompson was an ordained priest, right, Pat? She wasn't a nun, was she? Yeah, she was a priest. Yeah, she was doing a lot of substituting or filling in for Father Phelps. And I remember during the night, and I had just met her a couple times, didn't really know her. She didn't really know me. But when there was a special 9/11 service, this was 1 year. This is the first anniversary. And I didn't know how I'm going to react. I didn't know. I was so emotionally, I still am to this day. I mean, I have survivor's guilt, you know. But she welcomed me in, and she was incredible. And what she said, and I'm like, how did she know that? You know, and the grief that I was feeling and the sorrow and all that, she just pulled it all out of me. She had it all figured out. I was like, golly, this lady's powerful, you know. So that had a huge impact. You know, she really, really kind of got me out of the weeds, you know. So from that point forward, we became very close. And yeah, and you know, to this day, and I guess next year is going to be the 25th anniversary, so it's kind of hard to imagine, you know, something like that, a life-changing event like that can just stay with you for the rest of your life. And I think my faith, the church, my friends, my family, you know, they're all part of the puzzle of the support that you need. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I get emotional about it, obviously, but it is what it is, and I'm just glad to be here.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah, amen.
I want to ask about just St. Augustine's. Like when you came back, did it feel just like the church, the community itself? Did it feel significantly different from when you had moved away? Was it fairly similar?
I'd say fairly similar. A lot of new faces. I mean, I was gone for a long time, and when I'd come back to Augusta and visit, of course, I'd go to church, you know, with my parents and all, when they were still alive. You know, to be honest, I think St. Augustine's has just been on a not a straight trajectory, more of a flat, not flat line, but just, you know, I mean, stable, yeah. And, you know, I mean, even then, I mean, we've been through some tough times. You know, there's been good times and tough times. I don't think everything got very dire, you know. But it's, you know, like I said, most of the faces have changed, and people who probably right after I left, probably joined the church and been members of the church, like the Moat family. I didn't even know them until I moved back. You know, large families like that. But of course, you know, Ann Boardman and some of the first generational members of the church, the foundation, you know, of course, they were still here. But it's, you know, I kind of think of St. Augustine's as, I kind of see the other churches trying to change, you know, in a way, and we're all trying to, let's face it, we're all trying to attract new members, and the youth. One of the things, the only time I've ever served on the vestry, and I'm not done yet, I may one day get back on.
There's an election coming up, I believe.
That's okay. But I was during, excuse me, drawing a blank here, the female priest we had. Harriet, thank you. Yeah. So when Harriet started, she had grandchildren who were going to school with my children. So she was really big on trying to get the youth program going. And we did. She brought back the 915 youth, and with, you know, bells and whistles and toys and all this, and it was really cute, and it grew from 5 people to 30 people. And I thought that was one of the biggest accomplishments we had under her reign. And of course, she got sick, and she had, you know, I think she got breast cancer and she had to kind of step down. And that was the positive point during that period. The other side of it is that, you know, the whole Episcopal Church schism, you know, basically with, you know, homosexuality engaged in the church, and so we were having a problem, but we had some issues, and some issues with a lot of the congregation about that topic, and it still goes on today. And but all in all, I think we're a special church because we do welcome everybody. And you look at all our signs, I don't know if those signs are up anymore. The Episcopal Church welcomes you, you know. And you look at that and you go, you know what, they sure do. They do welcome you. So.
Yeah, thank you. I've got some more questions, but I want to open it up to questions that others may have.
Don't be shy.
John, it was your grandmother Nixon.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so your dad's.
That is,
That's
yeah,
it.
that is correct.
I thought it was Nixon family.
That is correct. Granny Lizzie, as she was affectionately known.
And your family's been in Augusta for many generations.
Five generations. Well, I think my children would make it 5 generations. So, yeah, or 4. But yeah, a long time.
You've seen a lot of growth.
A lot of growth. And they lived, you know, they lived on a house on Pickens Road. They lived on Johns Road. Mostly everywhere that my grandparents lived was on the hill. And then our family had property in South Augusta by the Augusta Tech off Lumpkin Road. They had like 500 acres. And my father was a real steward of the land. My grandmother, and how she acquired all this land was back during the Depression. She would pay the landowners taxes that couldn't afford, you know, they were going to lose the deed to the property. So my grandmother basically kind of built her portfolio of land by, you know, paying the taxes and trying to put that back in. Well, majority of those landowners never got their land back. But we had 500 acres out by Augusta Tech, and in 1972 it was condemned. The Bobby Jones Expressway went right through the middle of it. So, and they left us no frontage. So being a real estate guy, I'm like, you left us no frontage. So, and we still own about 175 acres out there. And we still have property down by the airport. But all of pretty much 3/4 of Brentwood and Waverly and Almond Road, all the way up to Walkway Extension was owned by my grandmother. And hence why this was gifted.
And a lot of these neighborhoods around St. Augusta would be developed in the 1950s and 60s.
Correct. And, you know, so the timing for St. Augustine's, I think my father realized, he says, you know, this is a good time to start a church because these neighborhoods are growing. You know, Wheeler Road was still a dirt road. And that bridge down there, I mean, it was a rickety old bridge, and the bridge would wash out all the time, and that curve used to be a lot curvier, and they straightened the curve out, but it was, you know, past Walkway Extension was no man's land, you know.
So all wooded, primarily wooded here.
Exactly,
when your grandma
exactly.
owned it.
The convent, the original convent the land was donated
Correct.
by your family, right?
Correct. There was a little spit of land that on that 500-acre tract in South Augusta, we affectionately call it Concord Hill. Okay, my father and a man built a log cabin. Okay, out of the trees that were harvested on the property, and in about 4 or 5 year period of time, they built a 4-bedroom log cabin, basically no heat, no air, and my half brother, my 2 half sisters lived there. And Alex, my brother, my blood brother, he lived there for a short period of time. During that time, there was a little annexed piece of land that was next to it that was on top of the hill, and I guess we had a congregation of nuns, and they needed, you know, they were looking to, you know, establish a home, a location, a church, or what have you. And sure enough, the convent came right out of the ground, again, donated by my grandmother, and I think it was probably, I guess they, had a lot of pancake suppers to pay for, but it too was contemporary style too. And golly, it went at its peak. Shoot, I bet there was a dozen nuns there. They recently, I guess they moved to North Augusta. Are they there now? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the nuns? She actually was an interim here.
Alan Francis.
Yeah, Ellen Francis. And she's still in North Augusta? Yeah. Yeah.
Right behind Wacky Wayne.
Oh, okay. Okay, Marktown Road.
She's actually ordained as a priest, but she likes her.
That's what I thought. I thought
is,
she,
but she
yeah.
serves.
So our relationship with the convent was big during those, those years. I, as a little kid, was still trying to figure out what a nun was. I still kind of try to figure out what a nun is. My wife would shoot me if she heard me say that, but it was pretty neat. It was neat to have them. And there was another family that lived right next to them, the Cooks, and Cuda Cook, Sonny Cook. So when my parents had a function at the convent and all, they dropped me off of at the Cook's house. They had a swimming pool, and I didn't have to go figure out what the nuns were doing. So I spent a lot of time with that family. But yes, so yeah, our land and the gifting of our land has been a big part, of our family, and that's something that I feel strongly about. I know Alex does too, and my children, his children. It's just been real special in that regard. Very fortunate, You look at our issues now compared to what the issues were back then. It's just like night and day,
So, what do you connect with most in the worship service?
The liturgy, for sure. As far as my favorite, I like Matthew. I think Matthew's kind of complicated, so I do get attracted. But anything in the New Testament, Corinthians, just I'm crazy about. Corinthians covers both life and death, joy, sadness. So it works, for everything. The music. Man, we've had a long history with the music program. Starting out with a piano in this room with choir, on to the big church, the choir loft, as we see it now. Probably have the best acoustics in town in there. But some of the music directors have been pretty colorful. Eugenia, she tried to recruit me to sing in the choir. She goes, "You certainly would be a nice baritone." And
It's not too late.
no, it's not. But she was funny. She was a piece of work. But it turns out by marriage, she's related to my wife now. So so things are kind of crazy. But I love the music. I love the liturgy. I try to get into the weeds with the lessons, but I think the liturgy is really what, I think that holds true for a lot of people. That just really holds it all together. I used to go to the Baptist church a lot with my then first wife, and and I'm like kind of going, where is this going? Y'all got these guys standing up there and everybody's grinning, and they're singing and carrying on, and I'm like, y'all don't say the Lord's Prayer? It's different, very different. Yeah.
So John, you now serve on Finance Committee.
Correct. Oh yes.
Manage our endowment.
Yes, and gosh, and that's been going on. I guess, did Harriet create that, or did Jim?
I think Harriet.
I think Harriet started that. Yeah. Gosh, we're blessed to have Bill McCooch and the team that we do have. Yeah, I mean, these guys. He's a CEO, and I've mentioned several times before. We got 3 CPAs, and it's like, I really don't even need to open my mouth. I'm just kind of in here in awe of these guys, But the endowment fund is kind of like my baby, so what I concentrate on. But yeah, I mean, I've been in every aspect of this church in the diocese. I mean, trips to Honey Creek, trips to Canoga, trips to Atlanta, trips to Savannah, trips to Valdosta, all to do the church's work. Terry and I have something in common. We both went to a prep school in Connecticut called Kent School, and it's an Episcopal school. Kind of going back to one of your earlier questions, that kind of started me. We went to church twice a week, okay? Every Wednesday and every Sunday, and kind of got in a routine.
Yeah.
So, going to church wasn't painful really, even at that, being a teenager. So that's always been stuck with me my whole life, as well as Alex. He also went to the same school. But it was, a lot of priests were teachers, a lot of their families. Church was, really one of the centers of the whole organization. Again, another pretty stone church, made stone looking.
And he chanted the whole service.
Yeah.
didn't
Sure did. Yeah, I mean, and I look back at all these different Episcopal churches, and I mean, I never would come home and go, oh my gosh, I got to go join this church. It is the best thing. I love the priest. I love all this, that, and the other. And I just, in the back of my heart, I always had St. Augustine's. I said, man, I really, really got to be ready to do this if I'm going to move my letter. Being for the first baby baptized, are you kidding me?
It's in your blood.
Oh, it is. It is. Raise Creek.
This has been great this morning. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing your stories. It's been very
My
educational and
pleasure.
inspiring.
I hope I didn't talk too long.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
It's great.
Thank y'all. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.